The Glen Armentor Law Corporation, where a fair settlement is no accident.
Tonight on Blue Mondays, we sit down with State Senator Walter Boasso, who is running for Governor of Louisiana. The senator shares with us his personal story of recovering from Hurricane Katrina and trying to help all of his constituents in his district. All this week in history, and much more on this Blue Mondays for July 16, 2007. Good evening and welcome to Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is where we take a look at national, state, and local news through a progressive perspective. Tonight we have a very special show for you. We are joined by State Senator Walter Boasso. And Senator, I hear you're running for governor.
Yes, that is true.
That's outstanding. I think I might have seen one of your ads a few times.
Well, we've had them going on for a while.
That's great. They're great ads.
We've got a great response around the whole state about them.
Outstanding, outstanding. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself to the viewing audience? You actually are from Araby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Born and raised in St. Bernard Parish, which basically in many respects is gone now.
Yeah.
And grew up in a very simple household. My father was a union electrician who became disabled at 42 and grew up on food stamps and government milk and powdered cheese. And my dad wanted his son to go to college, and I got the honors. So I graduated from college. But in the meantime, of course, I got to go to school with my mother. But she went back to help support the family. And wasn't the coolest thing in the world to go to college with your mom. But we both graduated the same day.
Oh,
and
awesome.
During that term, I started my company when I was 19 years old with a boxer Tide and a garden hose, cleaning whiskey tanks being imported into the United States.
Amazing. That's great. In your commercials, you do an amazing job of telling us about your history. I mean, you're really limited in that 60-second spot that you have.
Right.
Well, tell us about growing up. Now, you grew up in St. Bernard Parish.
Yes,
okay?
I did.
What was it like as a kid down there?
Well, it was a very blue-collar community. Of course, all of St. Bernard Parish, before the storm, we were 67,000 people strong. And today, we don't have 10,000 people left. And so it's been devastating, but it was a good, simple life, and it was just, family.
Yeah.
And so much of this area here reminds me the same thing, is that those family units that people don't go too far away.
Right.
And that was one of the things. You always got to see your relatives, and the family unit was always together.
Well, in your family, sometimes you called them aunts, but they weren't really your aunt,
That's right.
It's because they were just part of that large family.
Yeah.
Well, I was visiting your website, which you guys have a great website that's up and running over there, and we have it listed here on the bottom of the screen. I saw an interview that you were on Nightline.
Yes, I was.
Tell us about the whole Katrina situation from your perspective in that area.
Well, I was the first one into the city of New Orleans that Monday of the storm itself. I had 100 wildlife agents and 60 boats, and we headed out of Baton Rouge at noon, and the storm was still over Lake Pontchartrain, and we made it as far as Metairie, Louisiana. And then, of course, I was trying to go to my hometown of St. Bernard. Yeah. And so it took us 5 hours to find a path that we could get around the city itself and get to the St. Claude Bridge. And, of course, once we got to that point, it was all water.
Right.
And so 7 o'clock that night, we launched the boats, and it was something that was almost prehistoric. It was a black night. The only light we had was the fire burning on top of the water itself. And my goal was to take all of those boats to St. Bernard Parish to help my constituents and friends and family. But we didn't make it 100 yards. And I could still hear people screaming in my dreams tonight for help. Because in the Ninth Ward, they had nobody there to help them. Yeah. And they were shooting flag guns and waving shirts. And it was just something prehistoric. And so we turned everybody loose. And I was the only boat that made it to St. Bernard that night because the wildlife infantry agents, we had them start rescuing people as quick as they possibly could. And then it's something you can really write a book about. It's hard to believe you're in the United States. We were there left by ourselves, and you have a senator that is not too far from here who called me and asked me if he could help, and that was Senator Nick Gotro. And you've heard stories about the Cajun Navy.
Exactly.
And I said, Nick, I just need boats. I need to get people. I got to try and save them. And
I remember that well.
We had the Cajun Navy come down there and help us, and it was rough. There was no leadership. There was no organization. And basically we had to fend for ourselves. And so that meant commandeering boats, commandeering ferries, warehouses, and anything we could take to try and survive. Because on Tuesday night, by that time I had taken over a warehouse where I had several thousand people, and I'm sitting there with 87 MREs. And it was just something just totally astounding. You know, you had no medicine. It's just, you cannot even begin to believe you were living in this country. So,
and I'm sure that you guys kept thinking the whole time, oh, we're going to have help any minute, you know, in will come the cavalry, and you guys waited and
It took 8 days before I got the U.S. Army to us, and we were left with volunteers and 4 people from the National Guard. And good news is that we saved probably well over 17,000 people. We were able to evacuate them across the river on ferries and on barges that we seized. And it all worked out. And it's a shame, but I look back at 22 months later and look at what's left there now.
Right.
And so many people holding on for their life, and their routine has been taken away from them. And President Bush said it very plainly in Jackson Square. He says, I will do whatever it takes to bring Louisiana back. And I could tell you it's failed us miserably.
Right. Well, and the horrible thing about that was it was not only was the speech canned, but so was the entire event, because they brought in all those generators so that they could light him perfectly and light Jackson Square. You know, but meanwhile they then pull up and they're gone, and we hardly.
You want to hear one better than that?
Yeah.
We are trying to save people. We're going rooftop to rooftop with axes, busting holes in the roof, trying to evacuate people out by helicopter. Just imagine thousands and thousands of houses, and you had to go at idle speed to pick up people in a boat and go back to the few dry pieces of land that we had. And so after the third day, we had helicopter support that came in that was pulling people off the roofs themselves. And when our president decided to fly over, instead of getting a boat or a vehicle, we had to shut down air rescue for almost 4 hours.
So that Air Force One could make it through safely. Unbelievable. So, St. Bernard Parish today.
Well, my whole district is Lower Plaquemines Parish, which got wiped out, all of St. Bernard Parish, which was the most devastated parish of all of Louisiana, and then a piece of New Orleans, Lake Catherine, the Regalites, fishing community, totally gone, and Slidell, St. Tammany area. So of the 122,000 people I represent, they were all affected, and 100,000 lost everything. And so where we at today, I guess basically in my district, I'm probably left with somewhere around 10 or 15% of the people back.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine.
Well, 4 years ago, I got into state politics. I had a gentleman walk up to me at a Red Cross banquet with tears in his eyes. And he said, son, I miss my daughter, my grandchildren. Well, come to find out, his daughter worked for me, and she took a promotion and went to Houston. And so that was the impetus. I went home and told my wife for 25 years, I said, look, I got to do something about this, because I was always active in the community. It was always trying to make our area a better place, but it always came to a point of politics. And so I decided to run for the state Senate, and I got elected. And got into the Senate, and I have to say, this is an education you can't buy at any university. Yeah. And I've always grown up, you know, I was always taught that government by the people, for the people. Well, it doesn't exist that way. Yeah. It's government by the rich and powerful, who want to control everyone else. And so I have to say it's been a rocky ride for me in the Senate. I took on some very, very hard issues, because as a businessman, you see a solution. So why don't we fix it?
Right.
And so I went back in history to try and understand the political part of what's been done under different administrations. And you go back and look, it's all the same problems.
Yeah.
And so, you know, why we don't fix them? Well, the reason you don't fix them is because you're going to upset someone.
Yeah.
And it just comes a point in time where I see so many opportunities in our state, and we have our shortcomings, but unless you take the courage and fix those shortcomings and not worry about the political consequences, it never gets fixed.
Right.
And so I wasn't going to waste 4 years of my life in the legislature hoping I would have a governor with political courage. And so I've already been there for 4 years. I know how the system works. I know what has to be done to make the system work better. And so now I've decided to run for governor because when I got into politics 4 years ago, I had a mission. I wanted people to live in Louisiana, have a family, have a job, educate their children, and keep them home. So this is a continuation of my mission. I know what I'm going to have to do when I get there. And it's going to be a challenge, but my whole life's been a challenge. And I've just been blessed by the good Lord to give me the opportunity to grow up the way I've done and live the American dream. So we're going to make Louisiana something people could be proud of because it's the political courage to make hard decisions and not worry about the consequences.
Right.
Unlike
the
myself.
Political courage to do the right thing, you know?
Exactly. But you know somebody's going to get upset.
Yeah.
And so I don't need a political career.
Right.
And my opponent, they need political careers.
Yeah.
So, but I got to go in there knowing that I got 48 months to change this state and to turn it around. If people want me to stay longer, then that's a whole different story.
Right.
But right now, I'm going in there with the intent of 48 months to make things happen and make people proud of the state they live in.
All right, and we're going to be back in just a few seconds with more from Senator Walter Boasso running for governor. But now, This Week in History. This Week in History. In 1831, Mormonism founder Joseph Smith Jr. receives a revelation in Jackson County, Missouri, on plural marriage that introduces polygamy into Mormonism. In 1921, Congresswoman Alice Mary Robertson became the first woman to preside over the U.S. House of Representatives. In 1925, Adolf Hitler publishes his personal manifesto, Mein Kampf. In 1926, a convention of the Methodist Church votes to allow women to become priests. In 1945, the Manhattan Project. The atomic age begins when the United States successfully detonates a plutonium-based test nuclear weapon at the Trinity site near Alamogordo, New Mexico. In 1947, President Truman signs the Presidential Succession Act into law, which places the Speaker of the House and the Senate President pro tem next in line of succession after the United States Vice President. In 1969, the Apollo program. Apollo 11 launches from Cape Kennedy, Florida, and would become the first manned mission to land on the moon. Also in 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin become the first men to walk on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission. In 1973, the U.S. Senate passes the War Powers Act. Also in 1973, the Watergate scandal. Former White House aide Alexander Butterfield informs the United States Senate that President Richard Nixon had secretly recorded potentially incriminating conversations. In 1989, United Airlines Flight 232 crashes in Sioux City, Iowa, killing 112 of the 296 passengers. In 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, and sister-in-law Lauren Bessette are killed in a plane crash off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. In 2000, leaders of the Salt Lake City bid to win the 2002 Winter Olympics are indicted by a federal grand jury for bribery, fraud, and racketeering. And in 2002, telecom giant WorldCom files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the largest such filing in the United States history. Celebrating birthdays this week: Bob Dole, David Treen, Diane Carroll, Donald Sutherland, Janet Reno, James Brolin, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Danny Glover, Robin Williams, Tony Kushner, Anthony Edwards, David Spade, John Leguizamo, Vin Diesel, Will Ferrell, Sandra Oh, Congressman Tim Ryan, Rufus Wainwright, Simon Rex, and Josh Hardnett. This has been a look back at history for the week of July 16th through the 22nd.
This Week in History is brought to you by Blue Mondays. Blue Mondays is on each and every Monday night at 9 p.m. on AOC Channel 15. Blue Mondays, your weekly progressive voice in Acadiana.
Well, first you start, education's the root of everything. We're not teaching our children how to feed themselves. When we grew up, we had work ethic and we had discipline. A lot of that's missing today. So when I went to public high school, we also had trade school. But I want to go a step beyond trade school. I want to have a vocational educational system. So in essence, what we have set up in today's model is that you have children that go to grade school and high school, and we hope they graduate.
Right.
But we lose a lot of them before they even graduate.
Right.
And then once they graduate, then they have to go to a community college if they want to learn how to feed themselves or their family, or they go on to college, and more than half the time we lose them to another state. So what I want to do is go back to the fundamentals, is that in Orleans Parish alone, we spend more per pupil than any other entity in the United States. Louisiana, we're number 6 in the most we spend on a pupil compared to any other state. So what I want to do is go back to the fundamentals, go back to 8th grade, give them a course in all the different vocations that they can look forward to, whether they want to be a teacher, a policeman, a field worker, or a refinery, computer technology, whatever the case. It could be something very glamorous. Offer those options while they're in high school. So by the time they get out of high school, they have the work ethic, they have the discipline, and now they know how to feed their family. Whether they decide to use it or not is another story. But we're giving them the foundation to survive in life. Let's teach them what a checkbook is. Let's teach them how to go buy insurance and the responsible things that they should be doing. And we're not doing that today. We have some good programs around the state where they have pieces of that going on. So let's take it and expand it and make it part of the whole program. That's education. We got to start and begin there. Talk about economic development. I'm a businessman. You're a businessman. When does the government come to you and say, look, I'm with the government. I'm here to help you? It doesn't happen. And you know what? I am all excited about new companies coming to Louisiana. But what about the companies that we have in Louisiana? We have economic development directors all over the state. I could tell you as governor, I will have every business visited in Louisiana. And I can ask them 2 questions. Number 1, what can we do to help keep you in Louisiana? And number 2, what can we do to help grow and expand your business? So go to the root effort and understand what people need. And then it's our job in government to make sure that we're able to deliver that. And I'll give you a perfect example of what's happened in this past session. Tax credits on everything you could tax credit has been taken care of. But what you have, there is no plan. There is no vision. And so what happens is that you have this classroom of 144 legislators that take things and throw it on the wall and see what sticks. And then once you know what sticks, then you got to figure out what can you afford and what you can't afford. But once again, it's going back to the fundamentals with a plan.
Where's the direction?
And then understand where your vision is. And once you put those 2 things together, we can make some great things happen.
We got some problems with ethics and some problems in the state. What are your thoughts on that right now?
I believe in glass pockets. People have lost faith in government. And I can tell you, being in government, I can understand why they've lost faith. Let's go back to the fundamentals. I hate to keep repeating that. But what we got to do is take every single issue that we have and lay it on the table. Once you lay it on the table, you invite those people who want to be part of the solution. And I'm talking about the legislators. Then you can bring in the stakeholders, just like you would do in any other business plan that you would operate. Let them be part of the solution. My personal opinion, I think that's why the ethics failed. You know, there's 3 ways to accomplish things that I've seen in the legislature. One is partisanship, to where if you controlled everything, both in the House and the Senate, you could run it down somebody's throat. My personal opinion, I think that's a bad way to do it. We don't need Washington politics in Louisiana. We got enough of that to see. The second thing is bringing everybody together. I got 500 employees. I don't ask them their political beliefs, but we bring them together for one common mission and one common cause. And government runs itself like this. Any successful business runs itself this way. So the approach that I'm going to take, I'm going to bring everybody, let everybody be part of it. Because whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, they were elected just like I was. Now, we all might have different philosophies.
Right.
But I can tell you, doing business around the world for the last 27 years, as long as you bring reasonable people in a room, you can wind up with a good, reasonable solution. Now, if that doesn't work, the only alternative is the people themselves.
Right.
And if people feel energized that they have a good leader who's there for the right reasons, who's there really to represent the people and not their political parties or influence, is that's when you can get people engaged in the process. Now, I got a chance to see dead bodies floating in the street. I got a chance to see the failure of our federal government. And until you can reach that and really feel the pain of people who are trying to survive, that's where you got to bring it together. And who would ever think it would be so hard to consolidate those levee boards after all those people lost everything in their life? Right. You know, I was trying to take politics out of protecting people's lives and property. It took us 2 sessions to do it and some bloody battles. Yeah. But we only succeeded because the people got engaged in the process. Louisiana is worth the effort of saving. And if people want to be energized, if people love Louisiana like we do, is that they'll take a few minutes out of their time and be part of this process and make sure that we have the people who are there for the right reasons instead of their own self-interest.
Absolutely.
Definitely governorboasso.org is a place where they can find out more information and more things about me. They can also sign up if they want to be part of the campaign.
Great.
I'm a real simple guy. What you see is what you get. There is nothing Walter's looking for, and it's going to be about everything that Walter wants. This is going to be about Walter guiding the ship and bringing everybody together for one common mission and one common cause. So I'm excited about it. There are a lot of people now excited about it because a lot of people thought the governor's race was over with. Yeah. Well, let me just tell you something. We haven't seen anything yet. I have a passion. My passion is to help these people and give them an opportunity and a chance to be able to live the American dream like I have done. I know what politics is now, sitting there in Baton Rouge for the last 4 years. And there are a lot of people, I'll be honest with you, that don't want to see me as governor. The reason they don't want to see me as governor is because they know they're not going to get away with what they've been getting away with previous administrations. Well, this is a historic time in Louisiana's history. The question we all have to ask ourselves is that can Louisiana recover from the recovery? Yeah. South Louisiana's paralyzed from the insurance industry. Somebody's got to stand up and solve the problem. But furthermore is that I ask the people to just take a deep breath and look. Number one, why do these individuals want to be governor of this state? Yeah. What is their true mission of what they want to accomplish? The second thing is take a look at our track record. What have we done in our life? Where have we come from? And the third thing is pay very close attention to what our vision is. You know, one of the things that I've been trying to do is because with the huge turnover in the legislature, I'm hoping to get my hands around of a good group of people that haven't been poisoned yet and that are coming to Baton Rouge for the right reasons. And so that's why it's so important now. It really is. Second most is that we live in a false economy. Yeah. We don't know where things are going. And so that's why it's so important we have a plan and we have a vision. So if people just take a look and see why we doing what we doing and understand the vision of where we want to go, is that's going to help people make a decision. Now, I've been pushing for debates for 3 months now. And what I was hoping that would happen is that we would have one issue a month because, once again, of this historic time that we face in Louisiana. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So the only thing I ask your viewers to do is that demand solutions from the people who are running for public office. Don't pay attention to political rhetoric. Yeah. And look for the truthful and honest answers on why people are really doing what they're doing.
That's absolutely true. I couldn't have summed it up better myself. What about, I think we actually will be seeing you here again in Lafayette, I'm sure a lot before the election. But one date that I do want to call listeners and viewers to is the date for the Parish Executive Committee meeting. You can find out all of those, all of that information on the Lafayette Democrats website.